Welcome to the Emisarios Unidos de Luz channel. If you enjoy this near-death experience story, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. Now let's start with the story. I had my first NDE when I was 12 years old, and let me begin by saying that the place I visited during the NDE isn't really a place. It isn't anywhere, but rather, it is everywhere. It's far away yet so close at the same time. In my youth, I would suddenly lose consciousness, visit that realm, and then return to my body some time later. My mother was convinced that my problem was physiological and would take me to be assessed by various specialists. After a visit to the realm of beauty, I would remember what I experienced so vividly, but as time went on, the memory of those visits became like the memory of a dream, and I came to believe that my visits to the other side were just dreams created by my imagination. As a teenager, I regarded those out-of-body experiences as something that I dreamed or imagined to escape reality, and I believed that reality itself was that which could only be experienced via the five senses. I believed that seeing is believing, yet I felt trapped and even imprisoned by my limited vision of life. When I was 16 years old, while watching a movie, I began to feel unwell, and soon after, I fell unconscious. As I was falling unconscious, I became aware that I was leaving my body, and at that moment, I knew that I was going back to that realm of beauty, that place I experienced so vividly in my youth. As I was leaving the physical world, I became aware of an acute pain in my chest, yet the pain subsided as my awareness became increasingly disconnected from my body. I then became aware of the tunnel of light ahead of me, and as I focused on the tunnel, I could feel a force drawing me towards it. Everything about the experience was familiar to me as I began to remember everything I had forgotten about it, and in that realm, all my questions and fears seemed to disappear. I was no longer afraid of anything, and I was aware only of the overwhelming sense of peace that permeated my being. I was rapidly moving towards the tunnel, and as I entered the tunnel, I noticed that the walls were covered with what appeared to be photos, just as they were on previous occasions. I knew that I was present in all of the photos, and yet, I didn't recognize myself in all of them. As I took a closer look at one of the photos, I could see that I was with several other people, seated in the back of a red convertible, on a sunny day. There were 5 of us in the car, and we were all laughing. Oddly enough, I didn't recognize myself or the others in the photo, yet somehow I knew that it was my friends and me depicted in the photos. I began to well up with emotion as I continued to look at the photo, and it occurred to me that what I was looking at was a photo of myself in a past life and that the memories of my past lives are energetically imprinted on my soul. Traveling through the tunnel was an experience that seemed to exist beyond time. As impossible or paradoxical as it may be to conceive of such an experience and much less to describe, it wasn't so much an experience of time dissolving or vanishing as it was an experience of time not existing in the first place. I cannot say for how long I traveled within the tunnel, but when I reached its end, I found myself within an infinite sea of the whitest light. The light was not harsh to behold, and with waves of pink light that flowed through it, that realm of light was breathtakingly beautiful. In that realm of light, I felt warmed by the presence of the most magnificent, profound, and sweet love, and in the experience of that love, I felt a deep sense of peace. Suddenly, 3 light beings in the form of 3 immense columns of light appeared in front of me, and from them I could feel an indescribably sweet and beautiful love emanating from them. As I stood in front of those tall beings, I became immediately aware of an uncanny familiarity and fraternity I shared with them, a rapport unrivaled by the affinity I shared with those of whom I felt closest to in my earthly life. It was a relationship so intimate that it felt as though I was part of them, and they are part of me. The love we shared was a love whose depth and beauty cannot be described in words, a love whose purity far exceeded the love that we experience and understand on earth. What we know of love on earth is but a shadow of the unconditional love that I exchanged with the light beings. In the kindergarten of earth, we withhold and give love based on our preferences, and only with those select few do we consider our family and friends. We talk about the nature of love, and yet, the confidence with which we speak about love is based on a limited application of the axioms we define in relation to the concept of love as expressed in its purity. In the realm of light, however, My understanding of love was based on an experience of the exchange of pure and unconditional love, and through the expression of unconditional love, I came to know and understand that love is the truth behind everything. The light beings communicated with me via the exchange of thoughts but not via the communication of language symbols. Telepathically, they reminded me that before birth, I had chosen to incarnate on Earth, and it was for that reason that I had to return. Return to Earth? Oh yes, I remember. I was a human living a human life on Earth, and that life suddenly ended, I thought as I began to remember the details of the earthly life lived what seemed like eons ago. I didn't want to leave the realm of light, which by then had become my home, but I knew that I had to return. The light beings understood the difficulty of incarnating on Earth and understood how difficult it is to extricate oneself from that state of oneness with everything, that state of pure and unconditional love and peace. I don't know for how much longer I remained with the beings of light, but with their assistance, I returned to the tunnel to make my way back to Earth, and it wasn't before long that I found myself back in the very room where my journey began. As I looked down from my position above my body, I watched as my friends tried to revive me, and it was through their efforts that I was able to once again fuse with my physical form. Being back in my body was like suddenly finding myself alone and abandoned in the middle of nowhere, on a rainy night where every drop of rain fell like a shard of ice hitting my body. I could feel pain in my chest, and as I opened my eyes, I wanted to cry. As lucidity returned, I could see the expressions of panic on the faces of my friends as they attempted to talk to me and their expressions of relief as I began to respond. For the hour that followed, I remained quiet as I settled back into the experience of having a body and as I came to terms with being back in the cold and lonely world. How long was I out for? I asked them, to which they responded by informing me that I was out for only 40 or 50 seconds. I was astounded to hear that what felt like 10 years passed in what was less than a minute of Earth time. I had a strong urge at that moment to share my experience with them, but as much as I wanted to share my experience with them, I thought better of doing so, knowing how they would react. I will conclude my discussion of my NDE experiences by saying that those excursions to the other side have been the greatest experiences of my life. Nothing I have experienced on Earth compares to the height of feeling and emotion that I experienced in the realm of light and love. Since my return, I haven't completely readjusted to life on Earth. I often endure periods of despondency and depression as the loneliness I feel here weighs heavily on me. I try to do my best to complete the mission I came here to do, however, and to take one day at a time. I have not spoken about my near-death experience to even those closest to me, and it was only recently that I desired to communicate with others about my experience. I believe the testimonies of near-death experiences will answer in very small ways the questions of our existence, and to me, they are like a single scent among the fragrances of billions of flowers.